Following video is not made for kids. Viewer discretion is advised. Hello to my subscribers, this is the TFA, and Geek coming to you with an extra special review. The thumbnail of the video is a Transformers figure that most of you probably have never heard of before. And this is a Transformers figure that is a type of Transformer that I haven't bought in a long time. It's a vintage figure, and I apologize for that awkward pause. It was right after the age disclaimer. I was trying to see if my volume was working correctly. But this is a Transformers figure that I honestly never thought I was going to own, but big shout out to my two close friends, the Ghost of Lore Master Starscream and Ruben Soto. I'll be linking their YouTube channels down in the video description, but thanks to them introducing me to the wonderful world of eBay.com. Over the last 2 months, February and March of 2022, which we are still in March as of this video's recording, it's March 29th. But thanks to those two good friends of mine, I have purchased a lot of Transformers figures the last 2 months that I honestly never thought I was going to have in my Transformers collection. And tonight, the video review, we will be focusing on the Transformers figure of this video. It is a vintage Transformers figure that it now holds the title of being the oldest made, the oldest manufactured Megatron figure that I have ever in my Transformers collection, and it is this one right here. This is the from 1993, the Transformers Generation 2 Hero Megatron figure. So this was one of only 2 figures that are part of a subgroup in the Generation 2 line known as the Hero figures. The other one was the Optimus Prime. I've had the Optimus Prime figure since I was a kid. I got Optimus Prime the year he came out in 1993 as a surprise birthday present. And the person who got me Optimus Prime, if my memory from that far back, from that long time ago, from the day I got Optimus Prime is correct, they considered getting me Megatron, but at the time, when I was a little kid, my parents didn't want me to think the idea that tanks and army warfare was a fun game, and something playful. So I didn't own any toy tanks when I was a little kid. So that's the main reason why I never got into G.I. Joe. My parents didn't want me to think of the idea of real-life military warfare being something fun. And so the first ever Transformers figure I had that was a tank I didn't get until I was 13 years old when I bought it on my own. So yeah, G2 Hero Megatron here was a no-no in my house, but I'm very glad to finally have him. I found someone selling Megatron here on eBay for $40, and considering the fact that this figure originally retailed for $10 when it was released in 1993, brand new in the box, to find one in such pristine condition out of the box where for just $40, that was a steal practically for my opinion. Now the reason why my voice is breaking and aching, it's because I'm so excited that this copy of G2 Hero Megatron is in such fantastic condition, and some of the reasons why G2 Hero Megatron is an example of a bygone era of some of the features about him that aren't seen on Transformers figures in modern times. For instance, the detailing here on his tank treads, that is not silver paint, that is actually in fact chrome, applied to each individual bolt and the edges of the wheels. So that's something you don't see on Transformers figures too often. One feature of G2 Hero Megatron that I unfortunately thought was a thing of the past was right here you've got stickers acting as his detailing. You've got for his tank number, I'm assuming this is what this sticker is supposed to be. You've got a large yellow letter D E with the number in front, with the serial number in front of it, X053 E094, which I'm assuming that's a that's a play value on the fact that this figure was originally intended for release on May 30th, 1994. The letter X, I honestly don't know. And then here on the front, you got these stickers right here, where you've got That's the Generation 2 Decepticon logo surrounded by 2 yellow crossbones. I don't know if those are supposed to be kill signs or not, because when you actually print kill signs on you, you're supposed to use your enemy's logo, not your own. So yeah, those are not kill signs. Those are in fact Megatron's faction symbols. So it's basically the idea of the reference to the skull and crossbones that Hollywood tries to famously say that pirates used to use in colonial times. It's basically Megatron's way of saying he brings death wherever he goes. And for those of you having any doubt if this purple Transformer tank logo is supposed to be Megatron, during the Generation 2 line, Hasbro threw out the phrase of the Transformers being robots in disguise. During Generation 2, it was completely ignored, and Transformers characters were given stickers like this one, where their names were blatantly printed on here, so you'd never forget which Transformers character you are playing with. So yes, I find that funny that Megatron was given a Megatron Rules sticker right in the front bumper of his tank mode. If you can call that a bumper, it's actually an armor plating. But yes, that does help if you forget at times that this purple tank is in fact supposed to be Megatron, on having his name printed on there. But I just always find it funny that Hasbro very blatantly threw the phrase of the Transformers being robots in disguise out the window, and just gave the Transformers action figures that were released in the Transformers Generation 2 line whatever vibrant colors they thought fit at the time. So that's another legacy of the Transformers Generation 2 line, was that during the late 1980s and early 1990s, the types of colors everybody wanted to buy on action figures and other related products such as Transformers was very bright, vibrant colors. You could argue that they're almost like Crayola type colors. These days, most people joke that they're just like the Skittles fruit candy, where it's very bright, fruity coloring of the Generation 2 figures, and even the more modern day figures, the updated figures that are based on the Transformers Generation 2 line, they follow that pattern of using the same bright, vibrant colors that were used back in the early 90s. And 90s. So here, in case you wanted to see it, here on the bottom Megatron, you've got the manufacturer's label printed on the surface of him. So back in the 90s, when the Generation 2 line was in full swing, that was what the manufacturing label looked like. You got Hasbro, Takara Tomy, and this is a time when Transformers figures were still made in China. And of course, 1993 is the year that this Megatron figure was designed and released east on the open market. Now, the main gimmick that the Hero figures of the G2 line had was that you had these rockets, and you would put them on a cannon, and they aren't perfectly round on the inside, just to make sure that they stay in place. I don't know how well it's going to show up since it's black plastic, but there's a little flat surface right there, and if you look closely at the bottom of Megatron's cannon, it's flattened on the bottom, and that's just to make sure that the missile doesn't roll side to side. So the main gimmick with the G2 Hero figures is that you would put these rockets on a cannon that the figure was attached to, and then this right here, this orange piece on Megatron, is a bellows pump, an air press pump, and you would squeeze down on this, and as you can see the rocket there moving ever so slightly, you shove down on this with a lot of strength, and you could get the rockets to fire using an air pump, an air bellows. And that was the main gimmick with the G2 Hero figures. So there, as you heard and saw, that was the rocket being fired with as much strength as the bellows pump could allow. Depending on the angle you have and how hard you press down on the air bellows pump, the rockets can get some great distance. But that is the main gimmick of the G2 Hero figures. And this is one reason why the G2 Hero figures are very hard to find in such pristine condition, because the actual air hose and the bellows pump itself, I don't know how well you can hear that, but yeah, that's the amount of air that the bellows pump releases. These two parts are in fact made out of rubber, and so if they are exposed to enough heat and moisture, they will disintegrate over time, they will crumble apart into a million pieces, and the main gimmick of being able to launch the rockets with air will be permanently ruined. Unless, of course, you design a new Bellows Pump and you can shoot air there through the cannon and to release it. But yes, unfortunately, I have seen photos on the internet where the Bellows Pump got ruined over time, and for G2 Hero Megatron, in tank mode, the Bellows Pump ends up serving as the center middle section of the tank turret. Alright, so if these parts were to disintegrate and fall off, unfortunately it would look like Megatron only has the outside edges of a tank turret on him. Now, these right here are the only places to store the rockets in Megatron's tank mode. You got these panel sections that flip out and allow the rockets to store on. When you don't have the rockets attached, Megatron does look more like an actual tank. When you don't have the rockets on there. But again, and with his bright purple paint job and his camouflage splotches, I don't know how you can see them, they're actually black triangles. So, again, Megatron is not much of a robot in disguise. But one thing I will say is that this does remain one of the more unique versions of Megatron that exists out there. I don't know of any other version that has a bright purple tank for a vehicle mode apart from the G2 Hero version. And for a special size comparison, here is G2 Hero Megatron next to the G2 Hero Optimus Prime figure. Again, I've had Optimus Prime since I was a kid. Unfortunately, on my copy of Optimus Prime, one of his rockets got launched, so he's only got one rocket left. But just to give you guys an idea, this is what Megatron and Optimus Prime look like standing next to each other. And because I've owned Optimus Prime since he was released in 1993, that was one of the main motivators that got me to get Megatron when I found him on eBay, was to finally have the oldest Optimus Prime figure in my Transformers collection have the Megatron counterpart are designed to be enemies with him finally sitting on the shelf. Now, that's pretty much all I have to say about tank mode. Megatron has, like most tank Transformers, Megatron relies on 4 tiny little plastic wheels to roll around on. I don't have a flat surface available at the time right now, except just to pull out a box. So again, as you can see, the wheels are very tiny, and even on a solid flat surface, the wheels themselves don't really spin that well. One thing I will say that I like about the wheels is that if you look closely right there, the metal pins aren't just metal pins. They've got 4 little bumps on them that makes it look like they're actual bolted wheels with hubcaps. So that's a cool design feature that Hasbro and Takara Tomy did on this figure. I will acknowledge that Takara Tomy released a more modern version of the G2 Hero Megatron figure. That version was a repaint of the Titans Return Megatron figure that was released exclusively in Takara Tomy's Transformers Legends line. I did a video review on that figure back in 2018, a year after it was released, I believe. I won't bring out that figure because it's sitting in a special place, and so I apologize for not bringing out the modern Takara Tomy exclusive version of G2 Hero Megatron for a size comparison, but I'm just overjoyed to finally have the original version, because I honestly never thought I was going to own this figure. Another thing I will say before we get to Megatron's robot mode is that a few years ago I got one of the repaints of this figure, which was the Transformers Robots in Disguise 2001 Bludgeon figure. I got that figure off of Amazon, still in the box, and when I told everyone I was going to take it out and unbox it, they all told me, no, don't do that, keep Bludgeon in the box. So I listened to them. Bludgeon is still in his box. I'm keeping him in a special place. And now I don't have to even consider taking Bludgeon out of the box anymore, since I have the original Megatron figure. So without further delay, we will get Megatron transformed into his robot mode. To take a close look at how bizarre of a robot mode he has. As you'll see why I say bizarre when we actually look at it, do a size comparison with Optimus Prime, and wrap up the review. Oh, one last thing I will say, for those of you wondering why I keep adjusting Megatron like this, one thing to note about the G2 Hero Megatron figure, as you can see here, there's panel lines right here, and there's of course a panel line right there where the back halves of the tank, when you fold them out, they transform into Megatron's robot mode legs. You can see here by his robot mode pelvis and his hips. One thing to note about the G2 Hero Megatron figure is that there are no tabs on this figure at all. There are no pegs, there's no eggs, there's no knobs, there's no ports. The only clips that you have on this figure are these little clips right here. We will fold out these panels to store the rockets on Megatron. Those are the only, those tiny little rectangular pegs right there for the rocket panels are the only pegs found on Megatron. All the parts on Megatron that are held together in tank mode are held together only by friction. So it's quite uncommon for you to find G2 Megatron where his legs, robot mode legs, want to fold out and not line up properly. So it is a bit of a challenge to get Megatron to have everything lined up properly the way it's officially supposed to be on his instruction sheet. Even his robot mode arms, which form the sides of the tank turret. One thing especially to note about Megatron is that the back of the arms like to sag outward, as you can see right there, because again, it's only friction that's keeping Megatron's tank mode held together. So I personally believe that Hasbro and Takara Tomy could have designed at least a few pegs or hooks to keep Megatron held together, either in place more. But that's just one thing to note about this figure over time, is that this figure basically depends on the tightness of Megatron's robot mode joints to keep the tank held in place. So I at least applaud whoever previously owned this G2 Hero Megatron figure that I bought from for taking such pristine condition of this thing. So let's get Megatron transformed and wrap up the review. Alright, and so here is G2 Hero Megatron transformed into his robot mode. And yes, it is a very unique design to it. Now the reason why I made the comment earlier about Megatron's robot mode being a little wonky, that's because the only place for the tank cannon to go is right here on Megatron's right-hand shoulder. I believe in some of the product photos, the Bellows Pump is actually turned around and it's actually attached this way with the hose connection being on top. But when you connect it this way, as you can see right here, it hits this shoulder and it causes Megatron's arm to look like it's sagging. So that's why I personally attach it this way. That way you get the full movement in Megatron's shoulder joint. Right. And again, the gimmick of firing the rockets, it still works. It works in Megatron's robot mode. So as you can see, it all depends on how hard you push down on the bellows pump that determines how far the rocket launches. And when the rocket is actually attached to the cannon, it becomes very lengthy. As you can see right here. One option that you have with G2 Hero Megatron is that officially on the product photos, and I believe also it was in the instruction sheet, you're supposed to have the rockets attached facing the same direction that they were in tank mode, with the rockets pointing forward. But what some collectors have done over the years since this figure was released is have the rockets attached facing backwards, so it looks like Megatron now has two fusion cannons, just like G1 Megatron, hanging off the sides of his arms. So that's pretty impressive. So that's a fun little gimmick you can do there. Now again, as I said, in tank mode, there are no tabs anywhere to be found on this figure. The only thing that's holding it in place is friction. So this is one of the biggest design flaws here on G2 Hero Megatron, is that there is just friction holding the upper and lower halves of his robot mode torso together. So it's quite common for Megatron to end up looking upwards since there's nothing to tab this top section of the tank mode, which forms his the upper half of his robot mode torso. There's nothing keeping it in place to his waist and pelvis area. So that's a little bit of a letdown there. Now, as far as articulation goes, Megatron's head is on a swivel joint, so it can look left and right. But on this copy, the head's very tight on it, and it feels so tight, I don't want to break it since Megatron's looking straight forward. So I'm going to just leave it there unattached. You can technically move. You do have the ability to move both arms upward like this at the shoulder, but again, this arm is blocked by the shoulder cannon. And you do technically have a swivel joint in the biceps, so you can rotate the arm outward ever so slightly, but I read on the Transformers Wikipedia before I got Megatron that swivel joint, it's so tiny, and the swivel joint itself is so tight on the figure that if you turn it too sharply, there's a risk that you could break it, so I'm not going to touch that as well. You also have an additional joint right here on the upper shoulder where you can angle the arm even more outward without moving the actual top of the shoulder joint inwards towards Megatron's head, but that's another super tight joint as well. The bottom line is most of the joints on Megatron's arms, all of them in fact, are very tight, so pretty much the only joints that work properly are the ones in the lower half of Megatron's body. You've got a ratchet joint in his waist, so you can turn him left and right 360 degrees. You've got universal jointed hips, so the legs can go outward that far, and when you push it back and forward, it's actually on a ratchet, so the legs can go forward that far, they can go backwards that far, or the legs can go outward that far, and no, the arms are not stopping them from going outward. That is how far they can go. So Megatron can do the splits if you desire to see him do that. And he has very tight swivel joints on the knees that double as the transformation joint when you turn the back treads of the tank mode into Megatron's robot mode legs. And no, this is not, your eyes are not deceiving you. These two little square-shaped knobs here at the base of Megatron's legs, those are his feet. And this is one of the biggest problems that the G2 Hero Megatron figure suffers from. Turning the figure around, there is no back section to Megatron's legs. The tank treads do kind of act as heel spurs, but unfortunately, to get Megatron standing upwards properly without him falling over, you do have to keep his legs touched together, because when you angle them outward to get him into an action pose, it's only these two corners here at the front of his feet that are holding him up, since these tank heel spurs become elevated off the ground. So it is very easy, in addition to Megatron looking upward, it's very easy for him to fall backwards and land flat on his back. So this is one of the Transformers figures from the G2 line that can be quite difficult to pose. And in the few times I've had Megatron standing up, he has fallen backwards without any trouble. So the real challenge is in fact getting him to stand up straight. And for a quick size comparison, here we have his rival, the G2 Hero Optimus Prime figure. I did a review on him a couple of years ago. The G2 Hero Optimus Prime figure is the oldest Transformers figure that I've ever purchased. This was the first one I ever owned. So yes, I am really thrilled to finally have the Megatron counterpart figure in my Transformers collection. So yes, I'm really thrilled to have these guys, and I apologize for my voice breaking there and repeating myself for a moment, but again, that's just how thrilled I am to finally have the Megatron figure to go with my Optimus Prime figure. Again, because this figure was released in 1993, this now holds the title of being the oldest made, the oldest manufactured Megatron figure in my Transformers collection. I'm just thrilled to finally have both these figures here. And just in case you guys were wondering, yes, you can in fact fire Megatron's rockets from Optimus Prime's Bellows Pump, and vice versa. You can fire Optimus Prime's rocket from Megatron's Bellows Pump. The rockets on the G2 on the Transformers figures that had this gimmick of the air launching rockets, the rockets were all designed the exact same shape, even the sculpted detailing on the sides of the rockets themselves, the same ridged line, designs. Even the tips of the rockets, which are rubber, the shape of those was designed and the exact same way as well on all the Transformers figures that had this Bellows Pump launcher gimmick. They were all designed the same way. Even subsequent repaints that were released in the Robots in Disguise 2001 line, such as the previously mentioned Bludgeon figure, those rockets were all designed the exact same way. Pretty much the only art of the Bellows Pump that is sculpted differently is in fact the Bellows Pump itself. As you can see right here, it's kind of hard to see again on Megatron since his Bellows Pump is black plastic with the air pump itself being orange rubber. But here it is next to Optimus Prime's. And as you can see, there is different sculpted detailing here on the two Bellows Pumps. And even the rubber Bellows Pump itself is shaped slightly differently, although, again, I've owned my copy of Optimus Prime since I was a kid, and when I was a kid, I used to enjoy squeezing the Bellows Pump, so that's why I'm amazed that it survived the abuse that in my childhood mind I didn't realize I was putting on it. So I probably stretched Optimus Prime's Bellows Pump up a little more, so that's why it looks longer than Megatron's. But from the photos I've seen, on the internet, the rubber parts are the exact same size, and I believe the hoses are the exact same length as well. Megatron's looks a little shorter because of how it loops around. But again, between both these figures, the only part that I'm missing is the Optimus Prime's second rocket. It got lost, unfortunately, a long time ago. I did see one rocket selling on eBay a couple of weeks ago when I got Megatron, but someone else bought it before I could. So if I see another rocket going on eBay again, I might get it just to finally have Optimus Prime with two rockets again, just like Megatron here. But yes, this has been my review of the Transformers Generation 2 Hero Megatron figure. So for the proverbial question, do I recommend getting the G2 Hero Megatron figure and adding it to your Transformers collection? I will say this. I only recommend getting this action figure of Megatron if you have fascination with the Transformers Generation 2 franchise and you want to see an action figure of Megatron that transforms into a purple tank and has a shoulder cannon in addition to having two rockets that act as faux fusion cannons. And if you don't mind a figure that does not have any pegs holding it in place and is only held by friction and flops around a lot, then this is a Megatron figure that could do well in your Transformers collection. But if you don't like all the lack of engineering airing on Megatron's robot mode, then the original G2 Hero Megatron figure from 1993 is an easy pass. Again, the main reason I got this is because I've always had Optimus Prime, and I finally wanted to add Megatron to my Transformers collection as well. So thank you guys all for watching. Thank you to my subscribers for your continued support. This has been my review of the Transformers Generation 2 Hero Megatron figure. Stay tuned for more of my upcoming reviews. I will get around to reviewing more recently released Transformers figures. And until next time, you guys, transform and roll out. Goodbye, everyone.